Hello and welcome to episode 1 of True Crime Finland, Kirkkonummi Triple Homicide. As the title already suggests, this is a true crime podcast and it details cases that can be disturbing and violent. Because of this, I encourage you to use your discretion and stop listening or skip ahead if you need to. If you're ready, let's get started with today's case. Kirkkonummi is a coastal municipality located in southern Finland. It's a part of the Helsinki metropolitan area. There are about 39,000 people living in Kirkkonummi, and it is also a bilingual community. In 2014, about 17% of the population spoke Swedish as their mother tongue. Our story unravels in the small village of Vols, which is located about 6 kilometers north-northwest away from Kirkkonummi center. Less than 400 people live there permanently. In the summer of 1990, 42-year-old Veikko Rytkönen had just moved into a brand new detached house in Vols with his family. He was originally from eastern Finland and did not really have a proper education. To make up for this, he worked hard and eventually became very successful owning his own business. He was a contractor. He rented out cranes, offered breakdown recovery services, and cleared trees, among other things. His partner, 36-year-old Berit Andersson, also had her own business, a cleaning company. Together, they had a daughter called Jessica Melanie Andersson, who was only a few months old at this point. Both Veikko and Berit also had children from previous relationships. Veikko had 2 sons who are already adults, and Berit had 10-year-old twins. It's important to note here that Veikko and Berit were not married, but in a relationship and living together. Even though their daughter Jessica was still a small baby, Berit could not afford to go on maternity leave as she was in charge of her business and of her employees. As both Veikko and Berit worked, when neither of them showed up on Monday after the weekend, their colleagues got very concerned. This was not like them. They were hard workers and would not skip work without letting someone know. The next day, which was Tuesday, the last day of July in 1990, at about 10 in the morning, some of Veikko's colleagues visited the family house to check if everything was okay. Despite knocking multiple times on different doors and windows, there was no answer and the house stayed silent. Something didn't seem right. The police were called. At first, the police didn't think anything serious was going on and that the family had probably just left for a vacation without telling anyone about it. However, one of the colleagues kept demanding the officers to break the door to get inside. Because the police was still doubtful, they wanted the worried colleague to assure them that he would replace the broken door himself if there was nothing out of place found inside. The police eventually entered the house and the colleague's gut feeling was proven to be right. Inside awaited a horrifying murder scene. The couple had already been sleeping in their bedroom when they were killed in cold blood. Veikko was found next to the couple's bed and Berit was laying on it. Veikko had apparently fought with the perpetrator. He was beaten up badly and slashed multiple times with a sharp object. Berit was killed in the same manner. The couple had a waterbed and small Jessica had died when the bed broke and the water drowned her. She was found on the very bottom of the broken bed. The police concluded that the crime was committed a few days earlier, on the last weekend of July at night, either late Saturday night or early Sunday morning. The water from the bed had spread all over the floor and erased most of the traces that the perpetrator would have left behind. There were no signs of a break-in, and there was nothing out of place found in the other rooms of the house at first glance. The family did not have an alarm system, so no one had heard anything. The police did recover some clothing and samples, but despite this, they were quickly at a dead end. It is very easy to get to this house without anyone noticing you. As I mentioned earlier, this area is sparsely populated, and there are a lot of forests. The road that passes the house is not at all a busy one. There is also a smaller trail nearby, which you cannot see from the house, as there is a hill blocking the view. It was suspected that the perpetrator might have run off into the woods, returned to their car that was parked on this smaller trail, and drove away. There's only some forest and a field around this trail, and because it was summertime, the car could also easily be concealed among the bushes and trees. No one would even pay attention to a car parked there, because a lot of people would pick berries or mushrooms in the nearby forest and leave their car waiting on this specific path. The only nearby neighbor that the family had lived directly behind them if you looked at the house from the direction of the smaller road. You could just cross the hill and end up at the door of the family home without the neighbors or anyone else seeing you. The police searched the surroundings of the house, the forest, and the trail thoroughly with dogs, but nothing of importance was recovered. The yard connected to the house was very muddy and still unfinished, and as it had recently rained very heavily, it was difficult to find anything of importance there either. As already mentioned, both Veikko and Berit had children from their previous relationships. Veikko's adult sons were already living independently, but Berit's twins were living with the family. This particular weekend though, on Saturday, the twins had suddenly left to go to their dad's house for the weekend. It was not originally planned for them to go there this particular weekend, and it is not known who made this decision. It is also not known what amount of time the twins would normally stay with their dad and when. It is said that Veikko always locked the doors and windows carefully, but whenever the twins were with Berit and Veikko during weekdays, there was a spare key under the doormat left for them while they were at school and the rest of the family was at work or running errands. Because there were no signs of forced entry and the doors were locked as usual, it is very likely that the perpetrator knew the family and was either let in, used the spare key meant for the twins, or used their own key. The spare key was only under the mat when the twins were at school though, so this option is less likely. But by having the key, the perpetrator could have also locked the door after themselves and thus avoid getting caught. It's also possible that this person, who probably knew the family, already came to the house earlier to spend the evening or have some coffee, but decided to sleep over with them instead, and then waited until they were asleep to murder them. Even though there were no signs of a break-in, some items were stolen. Veikko kept 20,000 marks, which is about 5,000 euros in today's money, in the kitchen, and this money was gone. The money was apparently held in some sort of a self-made container, and the container was taken with the money. Veikko also used a handwritten notebook for his business, which had disappeared. It is not known what this notebook entailed or why the perpetrator would want to take it. All of these items are still missing. The police have also revealed that the perpetrator was looking for something in the kitchen either before or after the murders, but it is not known what. It is often thought that the motive for this triple homicide could be vengeance or jealousy, but according to some sources, neither Veikko nor Berit had any real enemies. Veikko was thought of as a decent and fair man who was doing well financially. On the other hand, he was also a tough negotiator when it came to business, and had apparently also got into some disputes while taking care of his company. Some said it was his way or the highway, and stated that he was not scared of stepping on some toes in order to get what he needed. It's also said that his relationship to his two sons was not the best. The boys had got into some debt and were living beyond their means, trying to pay off their debts but not being very successful in doing so. Apparently, Veikko had criticized them of this many times. According to one of Veikko's sisters, Margit, the boys had taken a loan of 60,000 marks, which is about 15,500 euros in today's money, at the time of the funeral, and would have wanted to, along with other inheritors, realize the estate quickly as their financial situation required speedy action. Margit also stated that Veikko had got himself a pistol close to the date of the murders and kept it with him day and night, even having it under his pillow while sleeping. He was obviously worried for his own safety. You would think that this is all there is to the story. Well, there's more. During this same summer in 1990, Veikko had started to receive weird phone calls. He was often threatened during these calls, and he was asked multiple times to help with towing a car, but the requests always turned out to be fake, and in reality, no help was needed. Attention was focused on these prank-like calls during the investigation, as there was suspicion that they were somehow connected to the murders. However, research has eventually shown that there was no link between these two things. But there's another bizarre incident that happened only a few days before the murders and that shares some similarities with these prank calls. Veikko received a weird note in which he was asked to help tow a car from Peuramaa, which is also located in Kirkkonummi, to a specific repair shop at 11:30 at night. Veikko arrived to this meeting, but neither the car nor the person in need of help were anywhere to be found. This letter is in Finnish, but I will translate it loosely here and add it to the show notes section of the episode so you can take a look while you listen. Good evening. We need help towing a car today in Peuramaa. A camper van, Mercedes-Benz. I will arrive with my wife at 11:30 and we will wait for the tow truck there. We need to be towed to Malmi Veho. Greetings, Matti Paananen. Now, there are many bizarre details in this letter. This next section might be very confusing if you're not familiar with the Finnish language, so I suggest you look at the show notes while you listen. First of all, the greeting with which the writer starts is not standard Finnish. Normally, you would write hyvää instead of hyve. It seems as though the writer wanted to imply that he spoke a certain dialect, but his attempt somewhat fails. The wording is closest to a dialect from eastern Finland, like somewhere around Savo, but it's not quite there, as you would also need to add another V, which would make the word hyve. However, it's very possible that the writer just wanted to make fun of Veikko's presumed dialect and use this arrogant opening to imitate him. I think this might be the case, as the rest of the letter is written in normal standard Finnish. If you look at the handwriting, it's somewhat sloppy and makes me think of a younger man. It is very likely that the lettering is intentionally kind of unclear to hide the writer's identity. According to some sources, the writer was right-handed but wrote this letter with his left hand, as the writing is a bit wonky as well. If you look closely, you can see that the word odottelemme on line 5 is very unclear. It's as if the plural ending was added afterwards and squeezed in. Odottelen is the singular version of this verb, meaning I'm waiting. If you add the ending I mentioned, the verb turns into odottelemme, which is the plural version of the same verb, meaning we are waiting. The writer mentioned that his wife will be there. To me, that's mentioned just to add a sense of security. But this explains the squeezed-in plural ending. Maybe at first, the author wrote the verb in the singular form until he remembered he already mentioned his wife and so had to make the verb plural to include her. Another noteworthy thing is that a few letters are underlined. On line 6, the letters ELL in siellä, and on line 7, the letters MA in the word Malmin. It might just be a coincidence and it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but at least the abbreviation MA is frequently used to mean Monday, which is maanantai in Finnish. ELL does not mean anything on its own, but you could say that the writer wanted to emphasize the word siellä, which means there. The time mentioned in the letter is also definitely weird. Why would someone want to tow a car in the middle of the night to a repair shop that's not the closest one and that is probably not even open that late at night? It might be that this specific shop called Veho repaired Mercedes-Benz cars only, but that doesn't explain the timing. Whatever the case, the brand of the car is not really even noteworthy here. It would have been enough for Veikko to know the size of the car. There's no date in the letter either, so how would have Veikko known which day he was supposed to go to Peuramaa? Since there was no one at the location when Veikko arrived, could it be that he went on the wrong day? This so-called Matti Paananen, who had signed off the letter, is most likely a fictional person, and the letter was meant to lure Veikko to Peuramaa and probably kill him there. Something went wrong, or not as planned, and Veikko was spared until a few days later. But the fact that he went there alone with no one with him proves to me that he didn't think he was in any kind of danger. Nowadays, there's a ski resort and a golf course in Peuramaa, but back then, it was more or less an empty lot. There was nothing there. I, for one, would definitely not go to a place in the middle of nowhere at night based on some note left in my mailbox if I was scared. I'm sure that on some level, Veikko knew what was going on, as the assignment was very vague, yet he still decided to go to this meeting. However, apparently even he thought the note was weird and ended up showing it to some relatives. On top of everything, leaving a note is a very uncertain way of getting help, so why didn't the writer call? If this was indeed just a way of luring Veikko to his death, a call might have revealed the identity of this person, assumed to be the perpetrator, so it's somewhat logical to leave a note. To me, the lack of date implies that the letter was probably left in the mailbox or at the porch of the house on the same day that Veikko actually went to Peuramaa. The handwriting and the letter have been analyzed many times, but neither the author nor the perpetrator have ever been identified, and it's still unclear why Veikko was not murdered in Peuramaa if that was the intention. Based on the letter and other factors, it seems that Veikko was the sole target of this carefully planned act, but why? No one seems to know. The police arrested and questioned Berit's ex-boyfriend only a few days after the discovery of the bodies. However, he was released soon after, as there was not enough evidence against him. Just a week later, Veikko's oldest son was arrested and even jailed, suspected of committing the murders. His DNA was found in the bedroom, but the natural explanation for this was that he had been there to see the newborn baby. He was also released sometime after, and there were no new arrests. In addition, the worried colleague who I mentioned earlier was questioned, as he had demanded the police to break in, but he was quickly ruled out as just a concerned friend. Berit's ex-boyfriend and Veikko's oldest son were also ruled out as suspects, and there were less and less people to question as time went by. In the beginning, the Kirkkonummi police were sharing the responsibility of the investigation with the National Bureau of Investigation, or in Finnish, Keskusrikospoliisi, but later on the NBI took over. In 2001, the police sergeant at NBI stated that they have a strong suspicion about the identity of the perpetrator. However, it is not clear when the previously in 1990 arrested suspects were ruled out. Even though it has been stated during the years that the NBI has a strong suspicion of the identity of the perpetrator, this case remains open to this day and it is still currently being investigated. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of True Crime Finland, Crime Stories from the Cold North. Art is by Mark Pernia. You can email him at markprn@mail.com. That's markprn@mail.com. Music is Night by VVSMUSIC. The next episode will hopefully come out in 2 weeks. Stay tuned. You can find me on my website at truecrimefinland.squarespace.com and on Stitcher, Podcast Addict, Pocket Casts, or wherever you get your podcasts.